Hello and welcome to Odds on Premier League Matchday 6 live video again with Tom Rennie to ask him any questions. For instance, is too soon to say 𝐬𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗀𝘀 out?
It might be too early to say it, but it's certainly not too early to think it. So that's where we are.
Okay, let's think loudly. Then I will ask you about West Ham losing also midweek game in the Carabao Cup with Liverpool and losing heavily. So, guys, remember a lot to talk about. Rodri's injury, Man City, Arsenal, United unable to win no matter the competition they are playing. So let's rock and roll. Remember to leave your comments, like the video, subscribe. Let's go on now with the show. And first game is a great one, the best one probably in this match day. Newcastle, Man City. I guess, Tom, it's really fair to ask you this question. Rodri's injury could affect the Man City title race or Man City eagerness for titles this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll definitely affect the way Man City play. It'll definitely affect the amount of games they win. It'll definitely affect them in key moments in both micro and macro of this season. Rodri's impact can't be overstated, really, with Manchester City. He allows them to push all the players forward that they do because he can do the job of 2 or 3 players in that central midfield role. He is the most important player when it comes to breaking down opposition breakaways. He is the tactical fouler in chief. He scores vital goals, Champions League final most notably, but many, many times during his career. He is the linchpin of this team. He is the most important cog. And not that I care personally a great deal about the Ballon d'Or, but when the Ballon d'Or comes around, Rodri should win it for being the best all-round footballer currently playing in European football. So it's a huge loss. Statistically, they lose a third of the games that he doesn't play, which is significantly high. Their average on points per game goes down from around 2.3 to 1.9. And it's going to be a season of fine margins if Arsenal can get 90-plus points. If you can get 90-plus points, there's every chance you can beat City to the title. And this might cost them 2, 3, 4 points. That could cost them.
Well, very, very important injury. And let's see if Man City is affected. In the first tough game they have away in St. James's Park, Newcastle 6th, lost to Fulham in the first defeat of the season, but at home, 2 games, 2 wins. Man City, by the way, they are winless in 2. Okay, 2 draws against Arsenal and Inter could happen. Luckily for them, they are playing Slovan Bratislava in the Champions League. Tom, this is a tough one for Man City.
Yeah, it's one of the few games this season where I'd give City a chance of losing. And that would be like the Arsenal game, the Man United game, the Liverpool game, and then away at Newcastle, away at Villa, away at Tottenham. That may be about it. And they've already passed, of course, the test last week against Arsenal City. So, look, Newcastle, I think the issue this season is defensively, not offensively. I think that the front three of 𝗵𝗵𝗏 in terrific form, 𝐿Exander-Isak, one of the best in the league, and Anthony Gordon. It has pace, it has quality, it has confidence. When things don't go quite well for them, they can bring on replacements. I was impressed by Osula when he came on for Gordon last week against Fulham, but impressed a couple of times with him this season. So, look, I think there's a good depth about Newcastle going forward. The midfield, last weekend it was Bruno, Joelinton, I think Joe Willock. Normally it's Longstaff. Defensively, I'd be concerned. I think that Dan Burn going to centre-half has seen them struggle. Lloyd Kelly playing as... I'm not sure he's as good as maybe reports when he was at Bournemouth suggested. And if it wasn't for Nick Pope, they wouldn't have won at Wolves a couple of weeks ago. So I think Newcastle are a bit undercooked compared to last season, but I do still think it's a good start despite the loss last week to Fulham, who've been playing really well. In terms of City, I mean, the replacement's going to be 𝐿𝗵𝗏𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 for Rodri, right? And that's not exactly a monumental downgrade. It's probably a balance now of Stones if he's fit and 𝐿𝗵𝗏𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, and then they can put the rest forward. They're still incredibly strong. They still have Erling Haaland scoring a monumental amount of goals. They're still favourites to win the Premier League title, in my opinion, but it just will affect them in important moments. I think Kevin De Bruyne remains missing for this game as well. Waiting for updated team news, but it looks like he is going to be missing for at least another week or so. So, look, last season, this was won late on by City, that late 𝐿𝐵𝗵𝗀 goal, and they were inspired by Kevin De Bruyne, who just came back from injury, had been missing for quite some time before that. That was a really, really important victory for City. It kind of got things moving in their annual end-of-season run. I think Newcastle have every chance of landing a glove on Manchester City. Going to St James's Park is a singular atmosphere in English football. Their home form across the last 3 seasons under Eddie Howe has been nearly spectacular, really. They've won so many games and given so many teams a really tough game. Plus, Newcastle often rise to the challenge in big matches. So I think they'll score, but I don't think they're going to win. If you look at the run of games this season, City have had a slightly soft underbelly. 1-3 against West Ham, 2-1 against Brentford, 4-1 Ipswich, and of course, the game last week where both teams scored. So I think both teams to score is a really decent bet here on City's form. And if you think City are going to win, I think you've got to throw that in. City and both teams to score is 2.75. That's really high for a Manchester City win. I also think both teams score, but they don't score loads. So under 3.5 goals in the match and City score, that's a 2-0, that's a 2-1. I think 2-1 personally is what it's going to be, brings you at 2.88. And as ever, look at the Haaland market, 105 goals, 100 goals in 105 games. That's a record you should always bet on. So Haaland score, City win, 2.1.
The definition in the first goal was top-notch by Haaland, but Man City, they are having difficulty sometimes to crash the net, for instance, against Arsenal, playing against 10 men, or against Inter in the Champions League. Plus 1.5 for Newcastle, Eric, so short margin. The odds, of course, are very low for Man City, and Carbon can see 𝐿𝐴, but 𝐿𝐴 pays absolutely nothing, and over 1.5 goals. This pays for sure very, very little. Well, the other title contender is Arsenal playing at home against Leicester City. They destroyed Bolton in the Carabao Cup, and probably, Tom, they set a statement at the Etihad, playing great, despite playing the second half with 10 men. They were this close to grab the win. It's been a very tough start of the season for them, because after this game, probably they could relax a little bit against Leicester City. They are facing PSG in the Champions League.
Yeah, their run of fixtures has been terrible. Really, really terrible in terms of quality of opponent. They had no time to really build up a head of steam before playing Tottenham away, which is a huge game for them. Man City away, Villa away. You know, it's just incredibly tough games for Arsenal. So they can feel a bit hard done by on that score. They cannot feel hard done by the way, by Leandro Trossard being sent off, because that was as clear a kicking the ball away yellow card as you're ever going to get. And sometimes you get lucky and get away with those, but you'd be getting lucky. You wouldn't be getting the right decision. The right decision was second yellow card. It was Trossard's fault, not Michael Oliver's fault. So just get over it, okay? But in terms of Arsenal, I mean, the way they played last week was spectacular, I thought. Very, very bold, very risky, very Mourinho to go ultra low block, 10 men in their own penalty area for much of that game, and also to be smart enough to allow Ruben Dias just to have the ball in the pocket multiple times. You know, other players in that position, they might have panicked and closed him down, but they were like, no, it's fine. He can have it. And that was 25 yards from goal. So it's bold and brilliant. And it should have got them the victory. In the end, it doesn't. Late corner. That's the way football goes. It was a great finish to the game for us. So look, they've had tough games. This is a infinitely winnable game against the Leicester side, who have yet to win on their return to the Premier League. I think that, I say the same issues about Leicester every week at the moment. You cannot rely on Jamie Vardy for 90 minutes every game defensively. I don't think that's a particularly high-quality backline. The midfield looks very championship to me, and you're relying on Jordan Ayew and Mavadidi. I mean, look, they're good players, but they're not Premier League players. And I think that is going to be an ongoing issue for Crystal Palace, for Leicester City moving forward, forgive me. So, look, I think that Arsenal win is an easy bet. Arsenal win to 0 because they barely concede a goal is always a safe bet with Arsenal. 1.8. Take that to the bank most weeks. Scoring against them is almost impossible. Then you've got to look at the corner market, because when Arsenal score, it's more or less a set piece. Did it again last week. Our bet came in. Gabriel to score. So go with it again. we're on a run. It's coming twice for us already this season. So why not? Arsenal to score from a corner and pick out the two most likely scorers. 𝐵𝗷𝗏𝗏 to score has now gone to 15. That was in the 20s in the first couple of weeks of the season. That's coming in. Saliba to score at 29. Less likely statistically, but if they score, it's probably going to be a corner. And those are the guys that keep getting on the end of it. So keep going with it.
It was exactly the same goal that we saw against Tottenham and against Man City. It looks like a trick in the old FIFA or something like this, scoring in this fashion in a corner. Rolling does not agree with you and the statement of Trossard being sent off fairly.
No. So many people don't. I mean, if you he did hear the whistle. He did literally a foul before that, and he wasn't passing it to. Where was he passing it to? If you can explain to me where he was passing it to, who he was passing it to, then I might go with it. But what he was doing is booting the ball away. That's what he was doing. Obviously. Obviously.
Ian going for Arsenal to win and Saka to score, and someone else prefers Arsenal and both teams to score. Leicester City can score 6 goals already this season. Next game is Brentford West Ham. My question at the beginning of the video: problems for Julen Lopetegui. 5-1 to Liverpool. Okay, was the Carabao Cup, but 3-0 against Chelsea. All home games were defeats, 3 defeats and 1 draw in the last 4 games. And as we all know, Tom, is very difficult to beat Brentford in home soil for Brentford in West London. Already won both games at home this season again against Crystal Palace and Southampton.
Yeah, and they're favourites to win this one as well. They've got a very good record against West Ham at home of Brentford. And I don't think you learn a lot from the loss against Tottenham or the loss against Man City for Brentford. I think the home games you mentioned are more an indicator of where Brentford are. They obviously miss Ivan Toney. 𝐬𝐿 is now injured, but Bryan Mbeumo, I mean, what a player. I picked him out to you a few times. One of the best in his position in the league, still just, I think, 25 years of age. Scored the goal against Spurs last week. A real brilliant striker, a top 30 player in the division, and he's at Brentford, and with the solid base that Brentford have, with the land of the Giants backline they put together with Pinnock and Collins and Ajer, hard-working midfield. There's every chance they can beat anybody, really. And with Mbeumo, they can score against anybody. So I make them favourites here, but I don't just make them favourites because Brentford are good. I make them favourites because West Ham are bad. I mean, that performance last week was shocking, actually, in how bad it was. Not that they were playing against Chelsea, who, we've always said Chelsea will come good. That the transfer strategy is mad, but they've bought a lot of really good players and really good offensive players, and they're going to have a lot of good days. But West Ham, the plan for Edson Alvarez to mark Nicholas Jackson last week was stupid. The plan to invert fullbacks when Chelsea played wide wingers was stupid. Everything about the way Lopetegui set up was an issue for the team. And then when you're 2-0 down in 18 minutes, you offer absolutely nothing going forward. You can see another one start at the second half. You have to take Guido Rodriguez, who has to just go. He's just not fast enough to be in this league. You could see that after 1 week. To play it for 6 weeks, to have signed him at all, I would question everything West Ham have done this summer if Guido Rodriguez was a plan, because that's a bad signing, really bad signing. And Lucas Paqueta has been dreadful start to the season. The whole midfield's got to change. I think the Carabao Cup in midweek's a bit of a nothing. Alvarez was sent off. It was 3-1. They scored a couple of goals after 90. It was a flattering scoreline for Liverpool, but West Ham didn't deserve to win it, but they didn't deserve to get beaten by 5. So, look, a lot of concern about West Ham. I think that Mavropanos, if Todibo is not as good as Mavropanos, they should not have bought Todibo. So we'll have to see how that goes, because Mavropanos is not very good. Wan-Bissaka needs to go back to defending and not playing as an inverted winger. Whatever he was doing last week was ridiculous. And you've got to find a way to get good out of this front three. There's no reason Somerville, Bowen, Kudus, and hopefully Fulkrug can't score some goals. But at the moment, he can't find the balance. So right now, Julen Lopetegui has got pretty much everything wrong since going to West Ham. And if he gets this wrong, and he gets Ipswich wrong next week, and he gets Tottenham wrong the week after that, I don't think he's West Ham manager for very long. West Ham have never in their history had 3 defeats at the start of a season at home. It's 133 years of history or something, but they have now. So it's historically bad. It might take time, and I'm sure he'll get a couple of passes as a new manager, but it's time to get it right. And he has to get it right this weekend, and he won't. Take Brentford win, 2.15. Look at the recent record of history in this fixture as well. Both teams to score seems a pretty obvious bet. But Brentford and both teams to score. That was the story last season, and I expect that to be the story this.
Big Sam to come back?
David Moyes is still unemployed. So that's what it's going to be. I told you it would happen, and it's going to happen.
Well, West Ham to win. Wow, West Ham straight win. Someone is commenting. Brentford to win and both teams to score, same as you said, for Jobs. Fraser, Tracer, Brentford to score in the first half. And Ian is telling us that 𝗀𝗵𝗿𝗀 is a manager with a low ceiling. He doesn't adapt easily and is just average tactically. Well, I don't like 𝗀𝗵𝗿𝗀. I said it at the beginning of the season, I must say.
Yeah.
Let's see if they are able to bounce back. West Ham lost to Chelsea. Next game is Chelsea-Brighton. Probably this is the game where we back Chelsea and they disappoint us, Tom, because it looks like they are taking off and finally playing good football, scoring plenty of goals, also 5 in the Carabao Cup. Last 3 wins were wins 2-0, but no home wins in the Premier League against Man City, against Crystal Palace. Brighton are undefeated this season, so again, probably we say, okay, Chelsea should win it, and then they draw.
I mean, yes, we've done this rodeo before, haven't we? Look, I was really impressed by Chelsea last week. I've got to say that. West Ham were bad, and I could have done the entire show on how bad West Ham were, but Chelsea were very good. They pushed the wingers wide, 𝗀𝗻𝗄𝗃 and Sancho in the first half. They pushed Jackson up on the last defender. I mean, look, again, I don't want to keep going about West Ham here, but if you play a high line against Chelsea and vacate the fullback spaces, they're going to kill you, because that's exactly what they want. If you combat that, Chelsea might have trouble. I think Brighton are going to be a lot more astute than West Ham were, so that might make a difference. But if you play high line, which Brighton usually do, you could be in trouble. So it just depends on 𝗀𝗏𝗀 as a manager, whether he is going to be shrewd enough to change it or whether he thinks he can go toe-to-toe with Chelsea in this game. Maybe he can. I don't think he can, but maybe he can. So we're going to learn a lot about the Brighton boss this weekend. But yeah, Nicholas Jackson scoring goals, Cole Palmer scoring goals, Chelsea looking impressive, not conceding many goals, lots of good stuff to like about Chelsea right now. In terms of Brighton, look, last week they got done by their own high line, as I referred to there. Van Hecke and Dunk playing on the halfway line, don't quite get it. I think that they are still 1 or 2 players short. There's hope that 𝐬𝐵𝗲𝗀 might be back for this one. Danny Welbeck, nice little purple patch of form, but they're going to need 𝐬𝐵𝗲𝗀. Adingra and Mitoma looked great last week, but 𝗵𝗲𝗄 and Hinshelwood had some good moments and bad moments in central midfield. It's weird with Brighton. The central midfield is so important to them, and yet they keep having to change it, whether it be sales like Billy Gilmore, or age like James Milner, or injuries like Adam Lallana. It just sort of feels like constantly they're having to make changes to try and make this work, right? So that's an issue, right? That's an issue for me with Brighton. They don't quite know who's going to play in their central midfield position. I think it'll be 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝗃 and Hinshelwood again this week, but they just need to settle on something. Maybe Weaver comes back in, I don't know, but settle on something. I want to see it for a few weeks. I think they lost control of the game a lot against Forest last week. And they'll have control of this game at points. I'd quite fancy them to score in this game, but I do think Chelsea will come good in the end. So bets, I think if you look at the run that Nicholas Jackson is on, the run that Chelsea are on, Jackson scores and Chelsea win at 3.25 is really, really nice. A double your money bet for a Chelsea home win. If Chelsea are to score, it's more than likely to be. The artist formerly known as Miss Jackson, now just Jackson. Chelsea and both teams to score is 2.88. And there's one I liked as well, because Chelsea have been really good, I think, at the start of games. Last week, the key case in point, but then have sort of faded as games have gone on, maybe because it's won, maybe because they've changed tactics in game. Chelsea to win the first half, but draw the second, brings you in at 13. It's a weird bet, but I just think the way Chelsea started the game last week, I don't know, that might be worth a small flutter. The top tip is Jackson and Chelsea, but a flutter bet, I quite like it.
Well, both teams to score for many people. Goals in this game, also taking consideration that Chelsea have to play European football in that great competition in the conference next week. So let's see if they keep some players on the bench to play really tough opposition they have in Europe these days. And the next one is Everton Crystal Palace, important for the relegation. Only 1 point for Everton, first point of the season against Leicester, but again, they lost points when they went ahead in the score sheet. Palace grabbed a draw, lucky draw probably, against Man United. Also, no wins for them. So none of these teams have won a single game. Tom, draw?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. Yeah, look, I think this is such a big game for Everton. It is such a big game for Everton because Sean Dyche's future might well be on the line. They've got the Freaking group coming in to take over. That'll take us a period of weeks. They won't be in charge anytime soon. But, you know, new ownership group normally means new manager. They've got a run of fixtures now where they just need to start racking up some points because it's funny the way they lost, right? For us neutrals against Bournemouth and against Villa. But actually, in both games, they played really well at times. And could have got something from it. So I do think performances are better than results suggest. And I do think that they need to start matching performances with results and doing it right now. Dominic Calvert-Lewin looks sharp. He looks fit. He looks a little bit like the £50 million striker that he was a few years ago. And he should be fit for this one as well. You never quite know with Calvert-Lewin, but he should be. Still no 𝗀𝗲𝗏𝗀, but I think that... There's every chance they will take 𝐿𝐭𝐴 out of the starting 11. He's really struggled at the start of this season. And if they play for at the back, I think he's going to have to get dropped now. I think it's gone a bit too long with 𝐿𝐭𝐴, and they do have a ready replacement ready to come in for him. So, look, what are Everton going to do? They're going to blast it long. They're going to give it to McNeil to run up the field. They're going to try and get a corner and get 𝗂𝐿𝐿𝐿 to score from that corner. And if there's a high line against them, they might be able to slip in Calvert-Lewin in behind or over the top to take a chance when it comes, right? So you already know exactly how Everton are going to play. The question is whether Crystal Palace are going to be able to stop it. And last week, they showed some really good defensive play, I think, against Man United. 𝗀𝗏𝗏 at centre-half has been quite good. I don't think it's Anderson who's gone to Fulham, but he looked quite decent. I think the balance of Richards, Gay and 𝗀𝗏𝗏 was better than when Nathaniel Klein was in that back line. And I think Kamada, Wharton in midfield is a good balance. Lost to 𝗀𝗏𝗏 to injury after we highlighted him last week. I came off the show to read that he was injured and was going to miss the next couple of months. So we didn't have that news at that time. So that was a blow. But I think Kamada and Wharton is a good pairing. And there were some good moments too with the front group as well at the weekend. Though I still think that they've got to find a way to play 𝗍𝐿𝐴 better. So I think low scoring is where I'd be looking here. I don't see two teams that are going to be able to score multiple goals in the game. Everton have scored, 5? Crystal Palace have scored 4. So go on the under here. Look at the under 2.5 market. I'm going to go for a straight up Crystal Palace win because I quite like the odds of 2.62. So I think I'll absolutely take that. But I do think any scoreline you pick here, go on the under, go draw on Palace. I'd avoid Everton for obvious reasons. If they start winning, we'll change our minds. But I think under here. That's the key.
Well, someone is saying Crystal Palace to win from behind could be an option. And Millie highlighted Everton halftime, Crystal Palace full time. This pays 35. It's a bold bet, but could happen, by the way.
It has happened like a couple of times, yeah.
It would be a good one. Our friend David is also reminding us that Maurizio Sarri has been linked with Everton. Everton and Roma, they share the same owners. And recently, De Rossi was sacked by Roma. And probably we can see another Italian sat or sitting in Everton's bench. Carletto, for instance, Carlo Ancelotti being one of those. Next game is Nottingham Forest, Fulham. Here we have really good odds if you are backing Nottingham Forest, and looks like a good option. 9 points, undefeated, able to beat Liverpool, able to draw against Brighton, but at home they drew both games against Bournemouth and Wolves. Also very good start for Fulham. Their only defeat was at Old Trafford, and what a goal scored by Jimenez. I know that you like Jimenez, and he scored a beauty against Newcastle.
I do like him, and I'm pleased he's back because 3 years ago, he was a 50-60 million pound striker and he got that horrible injury, and we never thought he would come back to anywhere near the quality he once was. But this season's been fantastic. He really, really has led the line well, scored great goals, looks very much like his old self, and what a boon that is for Fulham, who have taken a real risk on bringing Raul Jimenez to the club, considering the state he was in when he arrived, to not put too fine a point on it. Look, I think with Nottingham Forest, like, we've known Nuno for a long time. And Nuno is a low block manager. And his Wolves team from a few years ago were one of the best at playing low block in the country when they had Moutinho and Neves in midfield. They were able to control the pace of games. They had the pace on the counter on the wide areas of the likes of 𝗵𝗶𝗄, who's playing against him this weekend. So we know he's a really good coach at that. And we've seen it against Brighton. We saw it against Liverpool. The question would be whether they can alter those tactics in home games, whether they've got good enough players, the right players to alter tactics in this sort of game. The player they've got who can do it is Morgan Gibbs-White. The trouble is Morgan Gibbs-White was sent off last week against Brighton Hove Albion in a bizarre moment where the referee said he got the ball and then changed his mind and sent him off. So that was a strange moment in that game of a few strange moments against Brighton. So to not have him is a blow. I don't think there's anyone really of his sort of quality in the team. I would expect it probably to be 𝗪𝗪𝗀 maybe comes in. We'll see. So, look, I think the signing of James Ward-Prowse was shrewd. I think there's a good balance. I think 𝗵𝗫𝐿 and Murillo at centre-half been brilliant. Loads of positives around Nottingham Forest. The question is, are they going to be able to score 2 goals? That's the issue for me. The second goal is the killer, and I just wonder whether they'll be able to get it against the Fulham team, who themselves have started the season really well. I still don't like 𝐿𝐵𝗵𝗏. I still think he'll cost a lot of points this season for Fulham. But I do like Jimenez. I do like Smith Rowe. I think Traore is in a real purple patch of form, the best we've seen him for quite some time. Look, it screams draw. It screams 1-1. Screams it here. I think both teams are going to be able to score 1 apiece. I think a winner would be somewhat surprising. Again, look at the under market, the under 3.5 market. Screams draw at 3.25. Fulham 2 draws this season. Nottingham Forest 2 home draws so far. Saw the signs there. But Forest to win 1-0, 2-0, 2-1. That brings you at 3.5. So if you pick a winner, go group bet Forest, under 3.5 Forest, but draw for me.
Well, for you and for Ivan, draw as well. Amir, same. Jobs, same. So everyone is going for the draw. Chris Booth, anytime scorer for Ian. And the last game we have on Saturday is Wolves, Liverpool, Wolverhampton, bottom of the table, only 1 point, even if they have a good squad. Back-to-back defeats against Aston Villa and Newcastle, 14 goals conceded this season. That's a lot. And Liverpool scoring plenty of goals in the last games against West Ham, against Bournemouth, against Milan in the Champions League. So perhaps with this weak defense of Wolves, this good attack of Liverpool, we can see plenty of goals here.
Yeah, I think if we're going to bet on this game, you have to look at Liverpool goals and Liverpool big win. That's the only pathway to make some money out of this game. I mean, briefly on Wolverhampton Wanderers, they have not invested well. They've not got money to invest. They lost Mosquera to injury, who was probably their best player last week against Aston Villa at centre-half. He's going to be out for quite some time. I actually don't know who's going to play now at centre-half next to Craig Dawson. It's going to be an interesting question for the manager, Gary O'Neill, to try and fix. He's not blessed with a particularly deep squad of players and a particularly defensively rich selection of players that he can put into that position. So we'll see what he does. It might have to be Semedo going centre-half, or maybe one of the midfielders drop in there. We'll see what he does. But look, I think that offensively they have struggled. I think Larsson has not hit the ground running. Matheus Cunha, great goal last week. He's definitely a player who's well up for it. But beyond that, they're set up so negatively. They needed a game here against like Ipswich at home to be able to show a bit of attacking prowess. They have just sold so many good players in recent times, Wolverhampton Wanderers. It's a real issue, and they've not been able to reinvest in the squad, and that leaves the manager and the coaching staff hamstrung, really, as to what they can do. So they're going to be in trouble this season, and they're going to be in trouble in this game. They're conceding lots of goals to a Liverpool side that have scored, I think, 8 goals this week in 2 games, one against Bournemouth, one against West Ham in the Cup. So got to be a big Liverpool win. I think offensively, Mo Salah has had a great start to the season. Good to see Darwin Núñez score last week. I feel like he might well be able to go on a run. Gives a bit of respite to Diogo Jota as well, who I think is fantastic, but maybe hasn't hit the season running. Luis Diaz looks fantastic. I mean, I could go on. The only way Wolves win this is to make it ugly, 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 and shaft out a 1-0 result or a 0-0 draw. I don't think that will happen, and I don't think Wolves are going to score either. They've not been great in front of goal this season, and Liverpool have conceded, I think, just 1 in their opening 5 games. And that was it the opening goal of the season? I think they conceded before coming back to win. So look, I think that Liverpool win. They win to 0, 2.63, run away with it. Then look at your handicaps. Minus 1.5 is 1.91. Not amazing. Do we see him winning 3-0? I do. Minus 2.5, Liverpool is 3.25. That ain't too bad for a 3-0 victory. You can always double it up with a scorer. Take your pick, really. I'd probably go with Luis Diaz, who's looked the most impressive of the group. Player to score, team wins. That's always a double your money, but handicap market for me.
Well, 10-1 is the goal difference for Liverpool, so it's a good option going for handicaps. Also, Jobs is going for Luis Diaz anytime goal scorer, Liverpool to win, and both teams to score. In this case, for Ivan, be careful because Liverpool, they've only conceded 1 this season so far. Liverpool to score in both halves. Conservative bet for Ian. Liverpool playing Champions League against Bologna. Back-to-back Italian teams for Liverpool in the Champions League. Then 2 games on Sunday. Aston Villa, of course, also involved in the Champions League. Amazing season so far. 5 consecutive wins in all competitions after losing to Arsenal. And they play Bayern Munich. What a game they have next week at home. But before, Tom, they have to go to Ipswich and win. 3 points for them. Still no wins, but they drew the last 3 games.
Yeah, look, I mean, Ipswich are going to make a fight of it, right? And that late goal they scored against Southampton last week was one that's going to live long in the memory. It was a truly special goal in the last second of the game from 𝗲𝗏𝗏 to maybe get their season up and running. I mean, what Ipswich really needed here, similar to Wolverhampton Wanderers, was a nice, winnable game. What Ipswich needed was to play Ipswich. But, of course, that's not feasible. So this is a horrible game for them, a really horrible game for them. Villa have been, I think, probably the best team in the league so far this season. I just think they've been fantastic. Beyond the loss against Arsenal, they played well in that game. They've just been frighteningly good. In every game, they've found a way to come back. If they've gone behind, they've looked very dangerous. And to bring on John Duran, who scored again last week, our bet came in again last week, the last goal, you just have, you think you've got some respite, you think you've got through it, and then suddenly this guy who's always scoring the late goal comes on. You know, it's psychological as much as anything else. So I think Ipswich have been all right. They're nothing to be embarrassed about, but nothing to be particularly impressed about. Do I think they're going to win this game? No. Do I think they're going to score many goals? No. Do I think they're going to stay in the league this season? No. 3 draws? Sure. But, you know, I think they're going to be able to struggle to contain Villa to less than 2 goals. And look, Villa's scoring this season, 10 goals in 5, average of 2 a game. Another 3 last week against Wolves, 3 the week before against Everton. I'd back him to score at least 2 here. That brings you a handicap market of minus 1.5 for a Villa win. That's 3.25. And I keep picking this out because it keeps coming in. And if it keeps happening, stick with it till it doesn't. John Duran to score the last goal. It's 6. It's happened in the Everton game, the Wolves game, the Leicester game, and the West Ham game. If something's happened 4 times of 5, stick with it. So let's do that, everyone. Duran last goal, Villa win as well. Handicap market, shade for Villa. You'll make some money here.
Well, Jobs is saying not only to score, but to score a screamer for Duran. Have you ever been to Ipswich, Tom? Looks like a nice town, actually.
Yeah, they've got a nice harbour there where you can go for a nice dinner. It's very nice. I would always recommend East Anglia. It's a beautiful place to go in the country. And you're very close to like Yarmouth and the Norfolk Broads up there. Lovely place to go on holiday.
Their derbies against Norwich?
Their derby is against Norwich. They don't like this, I don't think, but it's called the Old Farm Derby as opposed to kind of Old Firm because it's all farmland in that area. So, yes.
Yeah, I was Googling Ipswich and looks like a nice town to visit.
Yeah, I would recommend it. It's nice. It's a nice place. It's a nice part of the country.
I made a mistake and I went to Birmingham, for instance, instead, and probably Birmingham is not worthy a visit.
Birmingham has its charms. Depends what you like. Depends what you're looking for.
Yeah. I mean, I like the pubs, but apart from that, I couldn't find the charm in Birmingham.
The curry mile is spectacular. The curry mile. Best curry in the country. Amazing.
Yeah, Indian restaurants were good, indeed. I found more charming Manchester, even if it's not one of my favorite cities in the world, but the city center, a lot of young people. So let's go to Manchester, Man United, Tottenham. I guess we can already say that this Man United is already disappointing in this start of the season. They couldn't even beat 20 in the Europa League. They misfired against Crystal Palace. Garnacho is missing so many chances. And now they are playing against Tottenham. They are playing on Thursday, Europa League as well. And they were able to beat Brentford. What a goal, by the way, Tom, scored by one of your favorite players, Maddison.
Yeah, I mean, James Maddison is a fantastic player. I think he's begun the season slowly, but I do think that when he gets his confidence on the field, I think he's going to be unstoppable for Tottenham Hotspur. If he can just get a run of fitness with the runners in front of him, I think that's a match made in heaven. Maddison, Postecoglou, Tottenham, Son should work. But I suppose should work is one of the things about football, right? It's why we're so obsessed with it, because Man United now should work. It all makes a lot of sense, that the Man United lineup. The back line makes sense, though Martinez should have been sent off last week for that horrible tackle on 𝐿𝐴𝐷𝐼. I can't believe he's not been retroactively suspended for a tackle like that. Completely unprofessional, but we are where we are. We're not in the era anymore of that sort of thing. I think that the back line makes sense. 𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐲 makes sense. I think he has got a little bit better in terms of his all-round play since he started starting games a couple of weeks ago. I couldn't believe they didn't win last week. I genuinely couldn't believe it. And I think they probably couldn't believe it as well. Plus, the game in midweek in the Europa was a slog as well. You know, great to see Christian Eriksen back and all that. It really is. But if the team is supposed to be 𝗪𝗏𝗏 and 𝐵𝐴𝐻, let's start seeing it now. Like, let's play it. Let's pick it. Let's develop it. Let's see what happens. Because it just... there's so many coaches here and managers who are like, oh, you know, I don't know whether I can put them in or not. And it's like, we've got to see it. And you're only going to learn on the field. You're only going to learn in training the balance of 𝗪𝗏𝗏 and 𝐵𝐴𝐻. And if we wait 7 weeks to see it and it doesn't work and Eriksen comes back in, well, we've wasted everyone's time. So I think that's got to happen now. And he's also got to settle on the wingers as well. We had a couple of games from Marcus Rashford where you were like, oh, okay, Rashford's back. He normally goes on a run. Then he's dropped against Palace. Why? Why did that happen? Garnacho's not playing at all. Then suddenly he's in. Why? Just pick a team now. Pick a team, run with it, and let's see what happens. It's been 3 seasons now, and Erik ten Hag still does things that just baffle us, absolutely baffle us. And the team just keep hitting the skids unexpectedly. And Tottenham, such a tricky opponent because there are deficiencies there, definitely. I think the central midfield is not right. I don't know what the right balance is. Pape Sarr's been in, he's been out. Bentancur's played there, but he keeps coming off. Bissouma's in, but then he can't get a start. James Maddison's playing a bit deeper. Some games that'll work, some games it won't. That's the issue right now for Tottenham. I think the back line is strong enough. I think the front line is strong enough. I think Brennan Johnson has come back from a bad North London derby performance to hit a really good run of form, including one of the goals against Brentford, the winner in the cup a few days previous against Coventry. So I think that's pretty set. The midfield is going to be interesting. That's where this game will be won and lost because both teams have essentially vacated that position this season. If you look at the recent run of form, it's up in the air, right? You can't quite look at the opening few weeks of the season and take anything from both of these two teams. They've both lost a couple of games, both won a couple of games. The only differential really is that Spurs have scored more goals, but even that is fluffed a bit by the home game against Brentford and the home game against Everton. Beyond that, almost identical. Two teams looking for identity. You know what I'm going to say? Screams draw. It absolutely screams draw here at 3.6, which I will take. It screams 1-1 draw. Specifically to me, never go a direct bet with a scoreline unless you want to put a small amount on to win big, but I wouldn't recommend it. But I think it'll be 1-1. Draw on both teams' score is 4. They're both averaging over a goal a game, or United is a goal a game, and Tottenham is 1.9, I think, because of the Everton fluff. Take away the Everton fluff, it is a goal a game. So I think they'll hit their averages. I think they'll both score. I think both will struggle to win. If you are looking for a way to see this game won, look at draw at halftime. Man United win it as the game goes on. And I only say that because of the home field advantage. Last 10 at 1-1. We have seen Tottenham crumble already this season at Newcastle in that scenario. And I think they'd probably do it again, even though I'd have more confidence in Newcastle doing it than Man United doing it. So draw, then Man United, 6.5.
Well, Amir is going for 1-1 or 2-2. Exact score could be an option. Fix going for Spurs. Double chance. Our Brazilian friend Gersau over 4.0 goals and both teams to score. I like the draw also for Jobs. And Jobs had a funny comment saying that Ten Hag talks like every other African leader in his interviews. Crazy stats, but not showing anything. Well,
I have nothing to say about that. I'm going to sidestep that. I'm going to just say, okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to comment the comment, actually. And the last game, Monday evening in the south of England, Bournemouth, Southampton, 5 points for Iraola's men, first defeat of the season against Liverpool. And Southampton only 1 point against Ipswich Town, only 2 goals scored, the lowest tally so far in the Premier League.
Yeah, I think Southampton are going to go down. They look in desperate trouble. They look like they've got a poor squad. They look like they haven't invested well. They look like they are built to go down and come back up, and more power to them. But they'll struggle here as they'll struggle all season. In terms of Bournemouth, you don't learn much from Liverpool away. When Liverpool kind of blow you out the water in the opening half an hour, they can do that to anyone. They have done that to every team in the world. So, you don't take much from that. I think maybe the only lesson is that 𝐻𝐿𝐵, I'm not sure about 𝐻𝐿𝐵 in goal. I think that one of the goals last week was directly his fault. And I think that you're relying on players to overperform their abilities all season long. That is an issue. And I refer to Christie, Cook, Sabani, Tavernier, 1 or 2 others. These are good 6 out of 10, solid professionals. But I think it's time for 𝐿𝐿𝐴 to come into midfield. I think it's time for Sinisterra to start getting more starts. There are quality players in the squad that might need to come in now after the opening flush and flourish of the season. And Evan Nilsson's interesting. Is he going to be a 15-goal a season man? I'm not seeing that at the moment, but it's not that I'm going to judge him as a player. I think you've got to judge him what we're going to get over the next 10 games. In 30 games, he might be. But in the next 10, I think he will struggle, as he has since coming in. And just to reiterate the point on Southampton, the back line, Sugawara, Jack Stevens, who's been there a long time, Jan Bednarek, and forgive me, earlier on, I said Lallana at Brighton. I know he's got to Southampton now. Lallana still starting for Southampton. I can't believe it, really. Like, he just shouldn't be starting games at this point in his career. Ryan Fraser's still knocking around, formerly of Bournemouth. I thought he'd retired. Again, I'm not being critical of the players. I'm saying they're not of the required quality to get the 30-plus points needed to stay in this league. And I think young Dibbling on the wing, the teenager with his socks rolled down, scored the goal last week, is the only one that looks sort of ready for this division, which is surprising considering he's the one that's not played in it compared to everybody else. So, look, don't touch Southampton. Go Bournemouth win. Take it straight up and down. And to your point from earlier on, 2 goals scored for Southampton. Everyone against them, bet on them to win to 0 until Saints start scoring goals. Bournemouth win to 0, 3.25. Take it, run with it.
Well, 2 defeats this season for Bournemouth. I made a mistake. Also, they lost to Chelsea at home. Very unlucky in that game, even missing a penalty. 3-1 for Jobs in this game. Well, Tom, your safe bet?
Safe bet is Arsenal. Arsenal to win. 1.17 was the last I saw. It might come out a bit, but they're going to beat Leicester at home. If you want to zhuzh it up a bit, you can go win to 0 at 1.8, which is still low. But Arsenal win. Throw that in your ACCA. You'll do all right.
And the mighty ACCA?
Last week, I was annoyed. For the first time in history, Manchester City let me down on an ACCA. I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it. The other 2 came in, and City at home winning 1-0, and it didn't come in for me. So that made me very annoyed. So a straight-up treble at double your money for Arsenal, for Liverpool, and for Villa. All big favourites. I think they will win. It's double your money. Let's get this on the board.
Well, you have your tips, guys, to enjoy the Premier League. You also should visit the Carry Mile, you said. If you go to Birmingham, you have to go to East Anglia as well. So, travel show, sports show, whatever you want to find in Oddspedia with Tom. Thank you, Tom. See you next week. Bye-bye.